Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the '93 release of the vintage Revellution Demon Funny Car Kit. It's a Revell kit in 1/25th scale, number 85-7355. Long out of production, these classic funny car kits are still available and at online auctions and larger hobby shops. The kit features 107 pieces molded in white, clear, and chrome parts with water slide decals, along with Goodyear two-piece vinyl drag slicks and front runners. It has a one-piece flip-up body, tubular frame, and a blown 426 Hemi engine. Back in the 70s, drag racing was at its best with new technologies and factory backing and some of the biggest names in auto racing. Even venerable modeling companies like Revell went after the moving billboards of the funny car circuit. Now this kit and the decals replicates the original All-Star Racing Team car driven by Ed the Ace McCullough, and he won over 18 national funny car titles. Now when you're done with this kit, you'll find it to be about 8 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 2.5 inches high when the body prop rod's not being used. Now as I mentioned, this kit was put out in the 90s, and if you've been modeling for a while, you know that means there are going to be some issues that you'll have to address. But when you're done, what a great subject matter funny car this is. Now we're going to be using Model Master liquid cement for most construction, but sometimes super glue for fragile parts and white glue for clear pieces. Also note that the decals are very large and colorful, and you'll probably want to use some of the aftermarket setting solutions to make sure that they conform to contours and stick. So one other word of caution: make sure that you follow the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear mentioned in the review. One of the first things that I did was do a little mock-up of construction, and I noticed that the rear end sits too high on the out-of-the-box version. So we're going to modify the rear bulkhead, and that's where most of the drop is seen. And less than 1/4 of an inch of material is removed from the bottom. You can see the X's there in purple, to give this a little more drop and more a realistic stance compared to the original piece. So after cutting out the parts that are marked with the X's there, I reattached the mount bar, which was below that, up to the bulkhead again, and reinforced the backside with some evergreen strip, but you can just use some strip plastic of any kind to give it some strength. And also, of course, cut out those small sections there with a hobby knife for access. When you're done with the modified piece, you'll have an arrangement that looks somewhat like this. It's just not quite as tall as the original was. In my opinion, this looks much more realistic for stance, but this whole process, of course, is entirely up to you, the builder. So likewise, I had modified part B8, that's the front bulkhead. It needs to be trimmed a little bit and have some material removed to drop the body along the rails in front as well. I just used a hobby blade here to trim away the unneeded plastic marked with the purple X's and radius. As you can see in a close-up of the box art for this kit, the engine for this particular version of the vehicle had a supercharger blower butterfly there and scoop, and the kit does not supply that. So what you'll have to do is either satisfy yourself with the stock kit, or go shopping into your parts bin for one of these blower units. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do, is install that, even though the kit as provided didn't allow for that. In this case, I found that the Revell Kit 7619 Gene Snow's Snowman funny car had the perfect blower setup that would fit onto my Revellution Demon. So the parts here for the butterfly and the scoop, that's 12, 13, and 14 from the Snowman kit, are going to be used to replicate the box art on our current kit. So in the current kit, we're going to replace parts 13 and 14 with the blower scoop there. And also, if you take a look here at this upper interior panel, we'll have to remove some material from it to allow access for the scoop and accommodate the roll cage for the rear bulkhead. So if you didn't drop the body, you wouldn't have to do that. But if you made those adjustments, then you can't lower the car and use the blower unless you make some modifications here, as you see once again with the purple outline and line, and that's compared to the part that has been modified on the left there in aluminum, and that's what you'll end up with after these changes. So once you've gathered all the parts for your motor, go ahead and assemble that according to the instructions. There's no surprises there, and everything fits together pretty well. And then we're going to get ready to wire the engine for a little added detail. And the kit instructions shows where the lines, the hoses, and the wires all connect. And the motors are pretty much the same for Gene Snow's kit, or even some of the larger 16th inch detail kits, but as you can see the instructions for one of those here, it gives you some good information on how to make your motor look much more authentic looking and realistic. So this is my rendition of the motor, and you can see the coloration and wiring and plumbing that I added to it, and that's all viewed in the previous two panels with the instruction sheets there, and put that together and add a little dark black wash for detailing to bring out the highlights, and you'll come up with a surprisingly detailed motor for your funny car. You'll find most of the detailing items that you need for really making your motor stand out at the hobby shops in the jewelry section. Probably the most expensive item I had to pick up here was a aftermarket distributor kit by Parts by Parks. But you can find that craft wire in various colors works perfectly for hoses, and some of the fine cinnamon red there can be used for some pretty nice looking plug wires, and even items that you wouldn't think, like small beads, can be made to look like coupling units for your engine. This kit doesn't show it, but as you can see here from the 16th scale kit, there are fuel lines that go to the blower, and you can replicate those using some of the 5mm gauge wire. So I just used some tweezers and pliers to bend that into shape and format the fuel lines, as you can see here in this larger close-up. Once again, though, time-consuming and requires patience, but when you're done, you'll get something that looks like you could just get in the seat and take off. Now we're going to return our attention to the interior panel and the upper end, and that needs to be rebuilt a little bit to accommodate the blower scoop, etc. Now, of course, if you didn't use that and you're just using the stock build, you can skip this step. Now, the short hood scoop was removed, and then a new scoop was built from some evergreen sheet plastic to house the blower. And on this build, it had to be done a couple times till the fit was just right. You may want to do a lot of mock-ups to get it to look quite right. But once it was done, I just smoothed that out and put a little putty type of primers on the edges, and smoothed it out and made it look nice, and it will really enhance the appearance of your model. So one of the things you can do to help position everything, of course, is the dry fits. So go ahead and assemble the frame. It's pretty simple. It's a basic frame. Just put the rails together, one side then the other, and then go right down the line to get the cross members in place, and add the axles. Once again, you have to scrape the chrome from any joint that you intend to glue together so that they'll stick. So go ahead and put these together, and then we're going to dry fit the engine in here to see how it looks and make sure that the frame is good and straight, and it will all fit up into the body and into the interior panels. The wheels and tires assembled and put onto the axles, you can get a good idea of how the engine scoop and snorkel will fit up in there and look when you're finished, and also before you start gluing pieces together. So go ahead and put this into position, and then if you see any issues like you need more height or something, you can readjust your scoop, etc., or position it more properly. Just make sure that you get everything right before final assembly. Of course, the kit wasn't designed to be put together the way that we have, by modifying the bulkheads and adding scoops and interior plate modifications. So dry fitting will be your friend. Make sure that you do that continuously through your build in order to make sure that it still fits together. And as you can see here, the frame was painted metallic blue, and the dry fit is going well. The interior panels are taped into place so that we can get a good measure of where everything fits together. Now we'll concentrate on the body itself, and of course you'll notice it's a 90s kit, and there's going to be some flash and parting lines, so you'll need to address those. And in this particular case, this was the third rendition of the kit release, so you're going to need some cleanup. Use some sand sticks and sandpaper and smooth these out, and once that's done, go over the entire body with some 600 to give it a little bite, and then at least 1,000 grit sandpaper to smooth it all out. In order to get that one-piece funny car body look, once the front and rear panels are in place, then you'll need to putty that seam so that it's nice and seamless and has a nice smooth finish for the entire body length. Now coat the entire body inside and out with a good coat of high-quality primer and let that dry. And once that's done, in this case I added 3 coats of dupli-color bright white, and then I let that set and dry as well. So next it's time to mask off the areas that are going to stay white. I used a little bit of the 3M fine line tape for that, and then regular masking for the rest of the panels. And then I sprayed the top coat on, which was a Krylon medium blue. And of course, prior to this, I had tested that on some white spoons that had been painted with the dupli-color to make sure there was no interaction. And you should always make sure before you put those final coats on that everything is going to work together. So once you've got a mist coat on of your final color, and then you can add some heavier coats to give it a good coverage and color depth. Once the final colors on the exterior were thoroughly dried, I flipped it over on a soft cloth and painted the interior with flat black on the underside of the funny car body. Another item that I added for authenticity, if you'll look at the box art, you'll see that there are aluminum lower body valances and rear spoiler extensions, and these aren't supplied, so if you want them you'll have to make them yourself, and I'll show you how I did that. First, the parts were made from some thin evergreen sheet plastic, and then just measure and cut using some trimming here and there, and size it up so that it looks proportional to the box art photos. Once you get the pieces in final shape, I went and got some aluminum tape, the kind that's used to on duct work. It's actually metal tape, and you can get that at home centers, etc. And then I cut it to approximate size and rubbed it onto the pieces and smoothed it out, burnished it down onto them, and then trimmed them to size and glued the pieces into place. And I just used regular tester's glue for that, to make sure that it didn't cloud any of the painted surfaces and would be tacky and stick the pieces into position. Now once you're, before that, if you want, you can polish this if you want a higher luster from it. Just as a precaution, and we start working with the decals. These older kits can sometimes have deteriorated decal sheets, so take a piece of it that has something on it, usually the script or logo or copyright, and then apply that. Cut it out and apply it to a piece of plastic somewhere and see how it reacts. If you have a little issue with it, or there are some breaks in it, spray the entire sheet with a little light clear coat. You can use Krylon or dupli-color crystal clear, to make sure that they stay together, but you'll have to cut them out more closely to the actual logos. Now, I find that the larger decals really benefited from some micro scale type of setting solution to make sure they set, and just smooth them out. Use plenty of warm water when you put them on. And I also had to augment again with some sponsor decals because it didn't really come with all the decals that are pictured on the original vehicle. So that, of course, is your choice. If you want, you can go and look for some of those and add those to your build. So next we'll install the windows, and you can add the front windows there with some white glue or crystal clear, and there's no issue there. But the rear window was actually made using some black foil product. You just smooth it on, push it into the crevices with a toothpick, and then trim it off with a sharp hobby blade to give it the appearance of a blacked out window. With the windows in place, mount the body on the car, and there you have it. A beautiful looking display for your shelf, and an classic funny car with some modifications. It is a nice kit out of the box, but with some of the enhancements and additions that I've showed you here, you can get a really nice looking, authentic funny car for your display. So if I were you, I'd go out and buy one and put it on my shelf. Hope you liked this premium model kit review in step-by-step fashion. And if you don't want to miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can check us out on Facebook or our website right on replicas.com. Thanks.